Hello, my name is Alice, and I am 41 years old. I am a first-generation Malawian American. I was born and raised in this country to Malawian parents. Malawi is a country located in Southeast Africa. And I'm just wanting to come on here just to speak about my perspective about this topic of I guess, different cultures within the diaspora of Blackness. I do want to focus specifically on the Africans versus African American dynamic specifically. And by the way, if I'm looking down, I've just written some notes for myself, so I'm trying to at least cover like a couple of main points and just kind of wanting to share my perspective. I've been watching a lot of YouTube videos recently, and we are living in some times, honey. We're living in some times, and I've been watching a lot of very insightful videos, very interesting videos, especially about this whole Africans versus African Americans and that dynamic. And yes, look, I was born and raised in this country, and I can honestly say I have definitely felt tension between the two groupings over my lifetime from both sides at various times in my life. Let's see. Well, I guess I do want to give a little bit of information about Africa first before I kind of delve into everything. Just to honestly, for information's sake, I feel there's some misunderstandings about Africa right off the bat. Africa is not a country. I've gotten that a lot. And not just like from my Black American brothers and sisters, just Americans, right? Westerners in general. I'm 41 years old, as I had stated before. So I really grew up, like my formative years were really spent in the late 80s and the 90s. And then, going in, I guess, the early 2000s. I was still a teenager by the early 2000s. So that is really the period of time that I'm really going to focus on in terms of a lot of the stories or scenarios or just the experiences I'm drawing from are really from that time frame, late 80s to say, early aughts. Okay. Yeah. I have gotten that a lot from a lot of Westerners, that they really do think that Africa is a country, and it's not. It's a continent, and it's the second largest continent in the world. We are the second largest continent, right behind Asia. We are second largest in the world, both in terms of area and population. So that means there's a lot of people of all different, believe it or not, races. Being African is not a racial monolith. And oftentimes when I say that, it depends on who I talk to, but even like I used to have a friend from high school, Black American. When I said this one day, that I think we were talking about Charlize Theron, I think is how she pronounces her last name. I could be saying it wrong. Charlize Theron? Anyway, I like her as an actress a lot. And I remember having this conversation with her. I'm like, Charlize Theron, she's an African woman, right? And she was like, oh, no, she's not African. I'm like, yeah, she is. In fact, she's more African than me because she was born and raised there. She's fully, like, culturally, that is an African woman. She's white, but she's an African woman. She's not indigenous. You see what I'm saying? She's not indigenous like us. We, the Black people, are indigenous. We are the indigenous Africans, right? I have to say this because I think we need to start dispelling that myth. Being African is not a monolith, a racial monolith. We come in all different shades and colors and races and colors and creeds. I said colors twice, didn't I? I just want to give some tidbits of education and information to kind of dispel some myths right off the bat when it comes to Africa, because I think when we can at least dispel those myths and tear those down, we can start to have more of an open conversation. Okay. Just wanted to give, kind of get that stuff out of the way. Okay, so I guess I can get into what I'm on here really for. Well, I will say this. Up until the age of 11, I was raised in mostly white neighborhoods and went to schools where I was oftentimes like the only Black person in the class or one of two. And then when I hit 11, we ended up moving to a part of the US where I now was at a middle school of half Black students and half white. And I remembered being excited at the time, but it did not go the way I had planned in my head. I was so excited to see all these kids who looked like me. I was super, super excited. And they kind of rejected me. Well, not because of me being African. That was eventually later on something I kind of got teased for a little bit. But initially it was just because I was basically a white black kid. I was an Oreo, as they say. I did reveal, hey, I'm African. The black kids took that and decided to tease me by calling me Kunta Kinte. And I didn't know who Kunta Kinte was. I had not been exposed to Roots. Now, my parents came here in the late 70s. They knew about Roots. They've watched Roots, of course. It was popular when, at that time in the 70s anyway. It was a big deal. But I didn't grow up watching it, or was it even discussed, or nothing like that at all. No. And so I didn't even know this name that they were calling me. I had no idea. I'm like, Kunta, what? And what I noticed eventually over time, because eventually I went off to find friends I obviously identified more with, and yes, they ended up being my white friends, of course, which that didn't sit well either. That didn't help my situation. But I will say, even in that, I had good experiences too. Looking back, at the time I didn't feel that way. I think because I was just so unsure of myself and uncertain of myself. I mean, I was 11 and 12 and 13 during this period, trying to figure out who I am as a person. I didn't know who I was as a person, obviously. And so, but looking back now, I do see the good experiences that I did have with certain Black American kids. That were there even at that time, but then some really messed up experiences because I just didn't I was like a fish out of water. I didn't actually have Black American friends until my senior year of high school. Believe it or not, I did. And it took me that long to really connect with anyone really a part of the Black American community. It took me that long. Because also I believed a lot of false beliefs about Black Americans that I had been indoctrinated in me from, certain people around me at the time, as I was growing up. And by the way, I do want to say, yes, I've heard for sure Africans say some very disparaging things about Black Americans. Yes. And the major thing I think I've really heard, Black Americans are lazy. And this is also a white supremacist, indoctrination, obviously, right? Black Americans are lazy. They don't work hard. They don't want to go to school. That Black Americans aren't unambitious. That was, I think, the most that I'd heard. And of course, that could be said in many different ways. I do agree. But that's the general consensus that I've heard with the different Africans I've heard say that. And I've heard different Africans from different countries, kind of speak on that at various times throughout my life, which is not true. It is an unfair judgment call. And it's not right, especially if you're coming to America, right? And to judge the American Blacks in that way, it's fucked up. Also, on the flip side, I've also, at various times, as I've walked through, different, Black communities around the U.S. and just, mingled with people, and there are some Black Americans who, are disgusted by being compared to an African. And I've seen that before. And I'll give you a story. When I was maybe around 19, so this is at least 21 years ago, I had a cousin who had just moved to the States at that time, and she'd been staying with us, and she was just a year younger than me. She is just a year younger than me, and I still talk to her. We're good friends. But we'd gone to a local community college just to ask about some courses, some classes, maybe possibly just, even start the process of getting her registered, or at least getting information, right? And the lady at the front of the line who was going to be helping us, she was a Black American lady. And she was in her early to mid 50s, I believe. She looked about to be in her early to mid 50s. Of course, Black don't crack. She could have been older, you know what I'm saying? But that's what she looked like to me. And right behind us was a young Black American girl, our age. At that time, I was, remember, like 18. So she was like our age, We get to the front of the line, and I started talking, for my cousin, because, she didn't know about the process. So I'm just like, hey, my cousin, she just came in, came from Africa, and we just want to get some information about some courses to possibly see if, she can start school, next term or whatever. And immediately, her eyes lit up. She was like, oh, you're from Africa. And her face just lit up, honey, and it was actually a really wonderful exchange. And she was just like, wow, and when did you get here? And she's asking all these questions, what part? And of course, you know, she's asking all these general questions, but just the excitement was just wonderful, right? And then she said, oh my gosh, and you know what? She tells this to my cousin, and you know what? You look just like us. And so I look at my cousin, and she looks at me, and we're just kind of like, yeah, of course. Yeah, we black, girl, we black, you know? And then she decides to address the young Black American girl who was standing right behind me. And then she says, girl, don't she look just like us? And I looked at this girl, and she immediately went like this. No. Now let me tell you something. We were just in line, yo. We did not provoke this girl. We hadn't spoken not one word to her. Just her feeling as though she's on the same level as an African, I guess, based on what she thought of what an African is. And I can understand where she was coming from, but not, she didn't have to do that. She could have just said, oh, I don't really think so. Or, you know, like there are other ways to play that off. Or just say, yeah, just to say it. But, oh no, she did not like that shit. And I will say, from the time, you know, when I was growing up, like when I would reveal I'm African, that would be a lot of the response. There would be this kind of disgust. It was almost like the kids didn't know what to do with that, like, African. Because they're thinking probably monkeys and shit. Ugh. You know, super dark, no hair, and if you do have hair, it's fucked up, looking like buckwheat. Very primitive. So I do understand the brainwashing aspect of this culture. I mean, intellectually, I understand that. And by the way, we in Africa, we have our own issues. We were colonized, okay, and it was a violent takeover. It's not like, they came all friendly, oh, Jesus, loves you, and we were like, yeah, take us, you know, or yeah, take our land. Like, no, it was violent. It was violent. So, you know, we have our own anti-black things too. That stereotype is an anti-black stereotype of Africans, by the way. So being that that's what she thought, I understand why, because that's part of the brainwashing. It's part of the brainwashing of our white supremacist society to look at anything that is considered dark, black, African, specifically African, which in this world is only, it's given this monolithic image of what an African looks like, which is false, right? We already touched on this. It's false. It's not true. But I'm just saying this, I do understand why she thought maybe the way that she thought. Maybe she also has had bad experiences with Africans. I don't know. But I know in that moment, she did not want to be compared to an African. And she made it very, very clear that that was beneath her and that she doesn't look like an African. And so what I'm just trying to say by all this is I've seen on both sides some fucked up shit. And things that are said and attitudes. I think the key to this, we've been brainwashed. So now it looks like we're all kind of waking up now with the times we're in. And it's, I think, wonderful that we're all like finally really talking about these things. These things need to be talked about. I think when we share, you know, we can really relate to one another and bond. And so I think that having more of these discussions as a whole, you know, all of us is a part of the diaspora. And, you know, I definitely invite my Afro-Latinos to come on here. Please express your, you know, thoughts and opinions and your stories. I would love to, you know, hear your thoughts as well about your experiences in America and your interactions with, you know, members of the Black community. And you know, like, and if there's something you want me to talk about, or I don't know, I mean, I don't have, honestly, as much experience with the Afro-Latin culture at all, so I can't really speak on that, but I would love to hear maybe some people's comments about that. And also just, I would love to hear, of course, from both my Black American and African brothers and sisters on all of this. I think it's so awesome that we're just talking about it, because we as Black people in this country, think about it, we've known these tensions, these cultural tensions have existed for decades and decades and decades, but we don't really talk about it, definitely not openly. I've not seen that, at least in my lifetime, really until now, in the time that we're in, this pressure cooker that we're now in here in the US, right? So I would love to definitely get everyone's, thoughts and just opinions, and thank you for listening to all of this. If you want more videos on this topic or other things, definitely please, comment below, hit subscribe. I do plan on having some more videos, kind of related maybe to this topic, but maybe some other things maybe that come up as I keep listening to other people. The people I've been listening to on YouTube have honestly just inspired me. So to do this, and I'm doing it now. So yeah, here I am. Thank you so much for your time. Please leave your comments below. Subscribe as you want to. I encourage it, and I'll see you next time. Alrighty, God bless.